Oh, we're back with another episode of the Bionicle Inspiration Series, the show where we spotlight Bionicle MOCs from across the community to give you some inspiration. And it's time for an awesome Pokemon collab. That's the theme of today's episode. We got a bunch of builders who have come together to build the various Ultra Beasts from Pokemon. Now, if you're behind on Pokemon and you have no idea what I just said, let me clarify what an Ultra Beast is. So, an Ultra Beast is an extra-dimensional Pokemon that has gone through Ultra Space. Most of them were introduced in the Pokemon Sun and Moon games, as well as the Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. A few more were introduced in that game. So, let's dive into all of these different Ultra Beast MOCs. Starting off strong with a MOC by Peter Shaker, this is Guzzlord. Now, I'm also going to read the Pokedex entries for each of these because I thought that would be a bit of fun. It says, a dangerous Ultra Beast. It appears to be eating constantly, but for some reason, its droppings have never been found. Who put that in the Pokedex? Who was like, oh, I want to take a look at the poop of this Pokemon? Anyway, so, I love the choice to use the wonderful armor pieces that come on the Baraki set, Taradox. It's kind of a way of, mimicking the mouth design like we see it on the original version of Guzzlord. Because when you look at that, it does sort of have multiple layers to it. So it's nice to see these pieces being used here to, in some way, give it a bit of depth or mimic it in some fashion. Plus the choice to use the kind of bluish glow-in-the-dark piece here. It actually matches it color-wise pretty well. The unique look of it certainly adds to that alien Ultra Beast vibe. Oh, and of course, because of those pieces, they do glow in the dark, like we can see on this image here. And yeah, that's just so in line with this very bizarre and almost kind of kaiju-like looking Pokemon. Really great choice there. I enjoy seeing the larger, too wide macaroni pieces on these weird tentacles that come out into these sort of weird bitey hand things. They really were the perfect piece to mimic how those look on the original Pokemon. These are just great pieces. They originally came on the Mickey and Minnie set, but they've also been used in some more modern sets like Dreams. They do come in a few different colors other than black in Dreams. So yeah, it's a really wonderful piece that's getting even more common these days. So it's lovely to see it popping up a little bit more on modern Bionicle MOCs because it's just so cool. What a great piece. Anyway, overall, they've captured everything from the really striking color scheme to the just obtuse, weird shape and size and look of Guzzlord. So yeah, very well represented. Lovely work. Naganadel has been brought to life by Panavara. The Pokedex states, one kind of Ultra Beast. It fires a glowing venomous liquid from its needles. This liquid is also immensely adhesive. I think this is a really, really solid recreation. They've matched the source material very well. And I think my favorite parts here have to be the way they've designed the torso and just that general area. So the torso uses the feet from the Knight's Kingdom character Danju, this one here, and those pieces, they make for a great torso design, but branching off of those, we've got some purple ice cream pieces that make up the arms. Now that connection, it's a surprising one, but it does in fact connect. I find sometimes it's really sturdy and sometimes it's not, so I'm surprised that it's holding up those pieces so well here. But yep, that is a connection, and it's a really cool one. And then that hand design, that is using a bit more of an obscure piece. This comes from the Zerg figure that you're seeing here from one of the earlier Toy Story Lego sets. So yeah, a lot of really cool pieces being used in a very concentrated area in some really brilliant ways. This is genius. And then we've got some lightning pieces and that bamboo piece in magenta coming out of the head. Combine that with the eye design, which also appears to be using some of those glow-in-the-dark Taradox pieces that we were talking about before. At least I think that's what that is anyway. It's a little hard to tell from these images, but still, it makes for a great head design. It's just really well put together. The wings are also attached in a more unique way. We can see at the very top that's where they would be connected, but instead they're connected on one of the lower down areas. And I like that. Sometimes that's a really good way to come up with interesting techniques is turn a piece upside down on its side or look for weird, interesting connections that may not be the intended connection, because suddenly you might come up with something a little bit more unique. And a little bit more crazy and interesting and creative. So do that next time you look at a piece. Put it on its side, flip it around, do whatever you can, and you might see it in a new light. And a new design and some inspiration might just appear before you. And now Ron Folkers has built Kartana. The Pokedex says this Ultra Beast's body, which is as thin as paper, is like a sharpened sword. And now, with that in mind, I think the very heavily system approach to this build is wise. There's certainly an origami aesthetic to this Pokemon, as well as inspiration from samurai and stuff like that. So to kind of really nail that with Bionicle pieces, I think that would have just been really hard. But the heavy amounts of system slopes and bricks and tiles as well, it just nails the design so perfectly. I love the face design too. That might be one of my favorite parts of this MOC. The way they've angled those 4 2x2 tiles as well as a few other pieces to create that face design. That really is just the best way to do it. I'm not too sure how they're attached on that angle. It's hard to see from these specific images. I'm guessing the angle is achieved with these cool pieces that sometimes appear on the superhero minifigures in collectible series sets. It's this interesting trans clear piece. It comes in a few other colors as well, but you most often see it in trans clear, where it's like a stud with an angled bar coming out of the bottom. There's a few stacked there on this specific image. But that would be how I assume that's done. But however it's done, it looks great. Another detail I love is the feet kind of area. I don't know if you really specifically call those feet. It uses this interesting spike piece in white. Now, this has appeared in a few recent sets in white, like the Tales of the Space Age set. You can see it on the shooting star on this specific build on the side. And then a bunch of them are used to make up the star on the recent Captain America shield set. So it's a really cool piece, and honestly, using it here, it was just the perfect piece to translate the look of this Ultra Beast. It was like it was made for this MOC. That's really cool to see it in action here. Very well done. Ezreal has built Nihilego, which I've never known if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I always get too distracted by the fact the word Lego is in that word, but this awesome Ultra Beast has been recreated by Ezreal, and let's read the Pokedex entry. It says, one of the Ultra Beasts. It's unclear whether or not this Pokemon is sentient, but sometimes it can be observed behaving like a young girl. I would say this is one of the perfect examples of a very simple MOC, but a very elegant MOC. It's using the simplicity to its advantage, There's not really too many pieces used here, but the ones that are, they absolutely nail the design, placing those white Boraki eyes on the ends of those tentacles just to soften them a little bit and make it look a little bit more like the source material. That was a really great move. Plus the choice to use those round white bricks for the kind of hat area at the top of this MOC. Really, really nice. If you are wondering what specific pieces I'm referring to, you can see them on this Mario MOC here on this white fountain in the middle. It's those kind of curved pieces there. It's those ones. And then I think actually the best part is these azure macaroni pieces that wrap around this part. It copies the look of the hat very well and translates it into Lego in a pretty decent way. Now, yeah, I don't know, this might be one of my favorites in this collab. It's just so well put together, but I don't know, in such a achievable, easy way. Sometimes you can look at a MOC that's super complex and you're just a little overwhelmed by it. But when you look at something that you're like, oh, you know what, I could actually probably do that. It doesn't use too many pieces and it looks simplistic enough. I don't know, sometimes that's my favorite kind of MOC, so really like this. The star stickers on the hat though, I don't know if those are official Lego. Not sure what those are, but it looks good and it achieves the look of the source material. So yeah, nicely done. Daniel Brickson has built an Ultra Beast that I've always referred to as The Pokedex says when stone walls started moving and attacking, this brute's true identity was this mysterious life form, which brings to mind an Ultra Beast. Now, I do love that Daniel has decided to add a little bit more kind of creative license to this Ultra build, adding vines and moss and stuff like that on the top, as well as building this little tiny temple or shrine on the top of Stakataka, which is not on the source material, but I think that's a really good call, and it fits in line with the idea of this looking like a stone wall or mimicking some sort of old stone temple or building or whatever. It was just a really smart play. We can also see on this digital render of this MOC that the legs aren't actually attached. There's no pieces linking those together. They're just sort of floating. But I like the choice to do that because it kind of looks that way in the source material. So hey, that's certainly a pro of building this in a digital world. You can actually do that. But I think if you were to build this in the real world, you could achieve a pretty similar result if you attach them with those studs at the bar on the angle, that piece that I was referring to before that you're seeing in this image. You could probably just shove those on and it would still look relatively similar. Oh, and one last thing, I love how Daniel added texture to the stonework. When we look at the original source material, it really is just a big pile of identical looking blocks, which, sure, seems fitting for Lego in that sense, but I think it would have looked kind of boring if you just recreated those exactly the same, almost like Minecraft-like blocks. Instead, actually having, some olive green moss on it, different texture to it, like cracks in it and stuff like that. Suddenly this comes to life more and is a lot more visually interesting. I think that's one of the beautiful things about adding texture to your builds is it actually does make it look a little bit better, and I think this would be a little bit forgettable if you just had it be exactly the same as the source material. So the creative license here really does bring this to life a lot more and makes it just way more exciting. Ivan Martinov has built Necrozma, and the Pokedex says about Necrozma, reminiscent of the Ultra Beasts, this life form, apparently asleep underground, is thought to have come from another world in an ancient time. It's like way more lore about that Pokemon. That was a pretty mid Pokedex entry. But anyway, I think this is a good example of why building in a digital world is a really good thing to do and a really smart thing to do, and actually it's probably better to have done this digitally than it would have been to have built it physically. When we look at the hands, there's those big old like crystals sticking out of them, and these use that color which it's hard to tell in this render. It's either trans black, the modern version of trans black, or it's the old version of trans black, which you can refer to as like trans smoke, or it's currently on Bricklink called trans brown. It has many names, but none of the pieces that have been used there that I can see, maybe like one or two actually, but most of them, those pieces don't actually exist in that color. So you really couldn't achieve that design. And let's be honest, that design looks fantastic and mimics the source material so perfectly. So it's kind of a shame. If you were to build this physically, you kind of couldn't do it. And yet it looks so good. So I think, to really bring it to life in an authentic and beautiful way, it had to be digital. So I really like the choice to do that here. Also, when we look at the arms, we can see that the majority of it is either using a slope or a brick that ends in a cheese slope. Now, technically, those wouldn't be able to link together because there's no actual connection points between those pieces. So again, that would only work on a digital mock. Now, some of you might be a bit against that because you're like, oh, there's no actual connection there. But honestly, I think that works at the aesthetic of this mock so well. The choice to use that kind of triangular piece, it reminds me of like crystals, which I think is kind of the look of Necrozma, right? He has that kind of crystalline look to him, or almost kind of, he reminds me of like obsidian as well, just the shape of it and everything. Both from the head design and the arms and everything else, it very much has that kind of crystalline look to it. So I think the choice to use those triangular pieces fits right in line with that. So yes, these connections may not actually connect, but it fits the aesthetic very well. So I think that was a good choice. Plus too, the arm design and the head design, the beautiful angles that have been achieved with that has been so well done. It is not easy to get interesting angles like that and to have them connect so seamlessly and in such a like clean way. That's just very well done. Gorgeous mock. Now we go to DV Mox, who has brought Pheromosa to life. The Pokedex says this about Pheromosa, one of the dangerous Ultra Beasts. It's been spotted running across the land at terrific speeds. Terrifying thought. Anyway, Pheromosa looks awesome here. It's great to see the head design has been translated kind of perfectly. Using those purple claws for the eyes, great idea. And actually, the purple really pops up against this white and the gold, so good color choice with that one. Even though I would say on the source material it's more of a blue, that works well. Now, it's cool to see the different ways that they've matched that skinny bug proportion that Pheromosa has. Whether that's including those two big white claws on the upper legs, such an awesome look, but certainly a look that creates a huge leg design, and thankfully that's just the perfect mock to do this on, since the limbs on Pheromosa are huge. You really couldn't do that on any other Bionicle character unless you were deliberately building a mock that was very lanky, so it's good to see such a nice technique working here in the perfect place for it to work. The lower legs too, they use one of these very large claw pieces that appeared in white on a set like Witch Doctor, for example, and that has a sort of slight angle to it to achieve the look that matches the source material. But hey, it's a great looking design and it fits the aesthetic perfectly. Such a well thought out build that just absolutely nails the source material. All the builders here did such a good job at capturing the source material. Really well done. Now, Care Creations has built the Ultra Beast Xurkitree, and the Pokedex says this about Xurkitree. It appeared from the Ultra Wormhole. It raided a power plant, so people think it energizes itself with electricity. Now, I love the choice to use those dark orange droid arms for the fingers on Xurkitree. These, of course, are from the modern version of the Geonosis battle droids, as seen in a set much like this one. And yeah, I don't know, that color and the shape of those pieces, it really does look like copper wire, which certainly seems to be the inspiration for this part of the body on the actual Pokemon itself when we look at the source material here. So yeah, a really great choice and a clever little part use to do that, that's for sure. And also the head design on this looks fantastic. It's great to see all those cones sticking out in all sorts of different directions. It really does mirror the source material in such a creative and clever way. And the same can be said for the body design. We've got more of those larger macaroni pieces being used. This is just awesome. Really, really well done. Brick Diamonds has built Blacephalon, but this is in its festive form, which isn't canon to Pokemon, but hey, it's a bit of fun. And now the Pokedex says this about Blacephalon: it slithers towards people, then, without warning, it triggers the explosion of its own head. It's apparently one kind of Ultra Beast. Another terrifying thought. So like I said, this one is very different from its source material. It doesn't really have those clown vibes as much. But I love the idea of making it fit with the current vibe of Halloween, since it is October when this episode comes out. And You know, with Pokemon, you've got the traditional look. You also have the shiny variant, which is a different color for it. But I love the idea of doing something a little bit more random, like a kind of mashup like this, of doing it in the color scheme of Halloween, or you could even do a Christmas version or something like that. It's just a great idea, but I don't know the inspiration behind this. I imagine this was inspired by what I believe is a Duplo pumpkin that's being used for the head there, and they thought, hey, it kind of looks a little bit like the head design on this Ultra Beast. Could be a fun idea to kind of mush that in with Halloween and see what result I come up with, you know? So yeah, it's a fun idea, and if that was the inspiration, that's a great way to use a bit more of an obscure Lego piece in that Duplo pumpkin. One detail I also really enjoy are the dark tan bushes that are coming out of those upper legs there. It looks like a scarecrow with like hay sticking out of it or something. That's a really clever part use, and man, those bushes look nothing like bushes in this context. It really does look like straw. A fantastic part use, that's for sure. So yeah, a really unique and interesting inclusion in this really epic collab. Aiden JH has built Celesteela. I always try to say Steelestia with this Pokemon. I always get the name wrong, but you know who it is. The Pokedex says one kind of Ultra Beast. Witnesses have seen it burn down a forest by expelling gas from its 2 arms. Ultra Beasts get scary, man. Anyway, it's great to see Aiden really commit to the size of this Pokemon. It's certainly a big one here. And I do like the certain design changes that they've made to this. You know, when we compare it to the source material, you can see the differences here. One interesting thing is this kind of broken apart leg design. It certainly looks cool, and also those bright green bamboo pieces that are sticking out, that's a fun touch. And all this added decoration on the torso, I don't know, there's something very like godlike about it. It reminds me of the detail of an old cathedral, or even like a big organ that you might find inside a cathedral. It's just a really nice vibe that fits the Pokemon surprisingly well. And on that, there's like thousands of Pokemon today, so if you ever need a good source of inspiration, Pokemon is a great resource for exactly that. I mean, you could look at the designs of a Pokemon like Garchomp, for example. I mean, he's a cool land shark. Why not turn that into a Bionicle? Or even just take an idea from a certain feature of the Pokemon, you know, like the cool arm fins. Why not put that on your next Makutamok, for example? You can actually learn a lot from Pokemon. Anyway, I love the use of those Pridak legs on the added legs on this Pokemon here. I assume that this is meant to be a kind of cloud aesthetic, or maybe some sort of broken pillar inspired design. Whatever it is, I think either way, it actually fits that vibe very well. So yeah, very detailed and very pretty mock. All right, on to the last one now. You know him, you love him. It's Buzzwole by Benjamin Anderson. And the Pokedex says this Ultra Beast appeared from another world. It shows off its body, but whether that display is a boast or a threat remains unclear. Lol, get wrecked. I love this hand design. It looks so posable and so fitting for this scale, and you know, while the typical Hydraxan hand design is a great look, it certainly wouldn't fit with the scale of this mark. So it's always nice when a builder builds in a larger scale like this, because it opens up so many options for bigger hand designs, because you've just got more room to play with, you know? You're so limited on a smaller hand design for a typical Toa, because there's just not a lot of pieces that fit that size, right? So this is really cool. We can see on this mock some trans-orange Gorast wings, and then some grey stickers are being used across the body on the sort of muscly areas. Now, neither of these appear to be official Lego. They certainly aren't official Lego. But I think changes like this, they're very welcome, because, man, it looks so much more like the source material. I think it's just a very fitting inclusion. I also love the waist design on this guy here, using those smaller macaroni pieces and a few other parts there to mimic how the abs look on the Pokemon. It's a good fit. And also that design, I think, just looks good in general. You could easily use that on some type of mecha or robot, because, I don't know, it does have a weird mechanical look to it, but I think in this context it translates very well to that muscular look. On the legs, we can see some red Hierophactory shells, and also some of that dark red armor, which is a newer piece that appears on some recent construction sets, much like the Iron Man set that you're seeing on the screen right here. The shoulder pad pieces finally in action on a mock. Always cool to see modern parts being included on a modern Bionicle mock, because, I don't know, seeing them in this context here, they very, very effectively fit the muscular look of Buzzwole. Really cool inclusion. This one might actually be one of the best of the collab. I think it's just a brilliant, accurate translation of the source material. Love your work, not just your work, Benjamin, everyone else's work in this collab. All of you did such a good job. Great to see some more Bionicle Pokemon or Construction Pokemon mocks, because I love me my Pokemon and I love me my Construction stuff. So it's a happy melding of the two. If you've got a collab you're doing yourself, you can always email it to me on the email that's on your screen. Any advance notice you can give me is always appreciated and helpful, because I'll more than happily do an episode about your collab. I might even have another one coming up pretty soon, so stay tuned for that. I'm stumbling over my words before I got so excited about the next collab. Otherwise, there's links in the description to all the other stuff that you need to see to find me, or the submission email. All that other stuff is there waiting for you, including links to the mocks that you saw in today's episode. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Love you tons. Happy building. Bye for now.